My name is Sarah Smith Silverman. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm a professor of history at American River College, and today's date is September 15th, 2023. So let's start off by establishing the basics. What's your full name? What are your pronouns? And what's your date of birth?
My full name is Dania Guadalupe Cornejo Cruz. My pronouns are she, her, and I was born January 16th, 2001.
Tell me a little about yourself. What are your interests and hobbies? What do you like to do?
Uh, Currently, I'm really into ceramics. I do a lot of just ceramic work. I'm a really big movie enthusiast, if you will. I really like Star Wars and uh, Marvel, and I.
What kind of ceramics?
What was that? Sorry.
What kind of ceramics do you do?
At the moment, I'm doing clay sculpture.
You're taking classes?
Yeah, it's my third ceramics course that I'm taking, and it's really fun. I really like it.
Do you do wheel throwing?
I tried for like 2 weeks, and it went horribly, so I stepped away and was like, hand sculpting is my is my go-to.
Okay, with wheel throwing, I feel like it takes a long time to
It does, yeah.
So don't give up. I mean, you can give up if you want.
I'll definitely take a full course, possibly next semester. But it was just the end of like my first class, my first ceramics class. The last 2 weeks he gave us to like learn wheel throwing, which definitely was not enough time. So I'll give it another shot later on.
Yeah, understandable that you didn't get into it after 2 weeks. So anything else you want to say about your interests and hobbies and what do you like to do in your free time?
In my free time, I really like to spend a lot of time with my family. I really like traveling, even if it's to the grocery store. I mean, I just kind of like being in like the presence of just people I love and care about. So I spend a lot of time with people. So yeah.
Okay, so where did you grow up and where do you live now?
I grew up in Sacramento, and I still live here. I was born, however, in Tamaulipas, Reynosa, in Mexico, and I've been living here since I was 3.
And where do you currently attend college and what do you study?
I currently attend Sac City College, and I'm studying early childhood education.
Are you part-time or full-time?
I am full-time.
Mm-hmm. And what drew you to early childhood education?
Honestly, I have an interest specifically because of my youngest sister. She is turning 12 soon, but she was diagnosed with autism when she was 3, 4, around there. And I kind of grew up learning how to teach her, how to communicate with her in a way that I knew she would understand, and vice versa. I feel like we learned a lot from each other. But specifically, I kind of learned that I really like teaching. It was really, what's the word? It was really rewarding being able to teach something new or being able to just help her understand certain stuff. And to this day, I think we really like just teaching each other stuff. And so it really just influenced me that I think, or it taught me that I would want to work with kids, and that I don't think I have the, I think I have the skills to do it. So she's been my main influence and why I want to do what I want to do.
So do you think you'll go into teaching younger kids who are disabled? Or?
Possibly. I don't want to assume that that's what I'll do, considering I know every child's different. Every child learns different ways, so I definitely don't want to shoot the idea down. I want to try it out, and if I don't think I have the skills for special education, definitely just regular education. But I'd be down to learn and see if I'm okay.
So how long have you been at SCC for?
I've been here for I want to say 4 years now. It's taken me a while to figure out what I want to learn and what I want to accomplish. So,
And so where do you think you might transfer to?
currently I'm debating Sac State or Portland, Portland University in Oregon.
Okay, so can you tell me about how you identify with regard to your social identities, broadly speaking? So race, ethnicity, sexuality, gender, disabilities, religion, and so on. It's a big one.
I'm sorry, yeah, that was a lot.
Start wherever you feel like it.
Gotcha.
So race, ethnicity, sexuality, gender, disabilities, religion, so on.
I identify how I identify, right? Okay. I identify as Mexican, Latina, Mexican American. I was raised here almost all my life, but Mexican feels better. I identify as a woman. I identify as there's not really I try to Google it. It's one of those things where like I'm still kind of discovering. It's religion based wise. I'm just kind of spiritual. There isn't really a word for it besides just I'm really into spirituality. I identify as bisexual. What are the other ones?
So disabilities, mental health stuff, or in class, I guess. I didn't say class before.
I'm lower income, definitely low middle maybe. Sorry, I blinked. What was the one?
Disabilities?
Oh, I have anxiety. I was diagnosed with anxiety at 19, I believe.
So you mentioned that you're bisexual. So what does that mean to you personally to say that you're bisexual with regard to your sexual orientation?
To me personally, I am attracted to men and females. So that's to me, bisexuality is just being sexually attracted to more than one gender, usually two, regardless of what gender, just more than two, or more than one, sorry.
And I think you said, did you say you use she and they pronouns?
Yes.
So can you explain why it's important for you to use both she and they?
I think for me personally, I don't mind just being referred to as they specifically. I mean, for me, it's not a sense of for gender. It's just it seems more natural to me than someone just being no she her and only she and her. I'm okay with just they. It's like when I refer to someone, I if they say they, it kind of comes to me naturally anyway. It's like, oh, they wanted this or they wanted that, so I would think that's the same for me. I'm not I'm not sure how to answer that. Sorry.
No, that's good. Yeah, do you have a preference, or are you just you don't really have a preference?
Yeah, that's okay.
So, can you talk about your coming out experience? What's been the process like for you to figuring out your identity, and do you disclose your queer identity publicly? Why or why not?
I discovered it. I found out. I think during the time where a lot of people had a personal time. It was during the pandemic in like 2019. I don't even remember anymore. Kind of being stuck at home, you don't really have much to do besides think, you know. So I was just in my head a lot, and it kind of clicked just one day that it felt right for me. It was just a little weird in my case because I was really stuck between calling myself just curious, bi-curious, or bisexual. So for a really long time, I tried to dismiss it as like, oh, I'm just curious. But I think after a while, I just accepted that it was bisexuality, and I didn't disclose it right away because at that point I had been dating my boyfriend for years. So I didn't really feel the need to come out because I was already in a relationship. So it was just kind of a me personal thing. In my head, I was like, if anyone asks, I'll say it, but it's not something I'll just kind of openly uh, let people know. But then after a while, it started. Uh, it felt like something I was hiding rather than accepting. So I told my sister first because we kind of tell each other everything. I told her as kind of a test run to see how I even felt saying it or how it even felt acknowledging it. And I mean, she was super accepting. She was, if anything, she kind of laughed and said, I saw it coming. And so then after that, who I thought would be the easiest person to tell was my boyfriend. And like as soon as I was going to say it, it felt really hard for some reason. It felt really difficult because when someone's that close to you and someone's been around you for that long, it just a change like that can go one of two ways. But I've always trusted him. He's always been someone I have never second guessed their reaction to something like that. And I told him, and it was exactly what I should have expected, and I didn't for some reason. He was super cool with it, and I mean, it realistically it didn't really change anything besides just knowing that that was there now. But yeah, not I wouldn't really say I'm out or open about it just because my parents are super religious. I grew up Catholic. They are still very Catholic. So it's if it's something that won't hurt them, I don't bother because again, it's not really relevant in my life as of now. I just know it's part of my identity, but it's not something that I mean I'm not looking for, you know, anything outside of my current relationship. So I don't really bother because I'm like it won't affect anything as of right now. I think maybe if in the future I unfortunately end up single or something, then maybe then. But I'd rather just keep the peace and not worry about their reaction to something like that.
Do you have a little worry that if you told them they might react in a way that would feel hard for you in some way?
Definitely. We've kind of discussed this a little bit because my sister is she's always at a young age, at like 12, 13, she's made it um, a discussion that she's open to learning about sexualities, learning about identities, and I've always been a really big supporter of it. And I would have those conversations with her because I'd rather her learn from me than learn from someone and get misguided or get the wrong information. And so I've never turned her away, and I've always talked to her about certain subjects that, to my mom, she was too young for, or she wasn't ready for, or I would hear a lot that you're just confusing her. So when it came down to it, I was like, at the end of the day, if this doesn't go away, if inevitably she ends up discovering a sexuality that isn't straight or heterosexual, I don't need to say that I'm accepting, but like, how do you feel? And she kind of just said, I mean, at the end of the day, she's still my daughter. So regardless, I won't support, but I'll be there for her. So and that's I keep that in the back of my head because I'm like, if she ever found out or if I ever told her, I would want to assume that's how she reacts. But she says certain things, or I mean, both of my parents say certain things and react in certain ways to other people who are open, and I would never want them to say or react that way to me. So I it's not something that I would ever think I'd be comfortable enough telling her. So even if they claim to be supportive, I just don't really fully believe it.
Yeah, there can be a distinction between what people say before they know and then what do they say when they actually know.
Exactly. Yeah. So I just yeah.
So you're a little afraid of how that they might respond.
Definitely. I've never had a fear that uh, they've never been violent or harmful in any way. So I don't worry that that will be a thing, but definitely just maybe not speaking to me anymore or bringing it up every second to continue questioning me about something that I already know. I don't need that, and it's something I'd rather avoid.
So, are you out to friends?
Yes.
So I guess the question actually, where do you find support and affirmation? Where do you find the most support and affirmation in your identity as bisexual?
Definitely from my sister, who's only 16, but she's already more supportive than I think anybody I know. My friends, my best friend from middle school has been out and since 8th grade, so I think she's also been really supportive.
She's also queer.
Yes, she's bisexual as well. But yeah, just I think the people I inevitably came out to have been the most supportive, and so I think that's why the fear was never there to tell them in the first place. And anytime I question it or what's the word? I think I'm not. I think I'm not. I don't know the word for it. Like I don't count, or like I dismiss myself, and I'm like I don't know. I put myself in other people's shoes, and I think that people won't see me as that, or they'll disregard my identity and say that I'm not. So I don't know where I was going with that. I'm so sorry. I lost my train of thought.
It's okay. Take your time.
They've never been they've never disregarded my sexuality, and they've never looked at me any other way than what I've identified as. And they've all been really accepting about it. So if I ever have self doubt or I have what's the word? I don't accept myself. They're there to just kind of grind me in and remind me that regardless, whatever I decide, whatever way I lean more to, it's it's always okay by them. And that's really what matters to me. They're the closest people to me, so it's nice to know that that support system's always there.
You're not alone in feeling that kind of like self doubt. I think, just in terms of the interviews I've conducted, right, people who are bisexual often say the same thing, that they worry that their identity is gonna be challenged in some way.
Yeah. And I mean, for me, it was always, and me particularly, it was that self doubt or that self dismissal. I felt even harsher from myself because I didn't discover it till after I was in a relationship with a male. So in my head, I was like, how can I really know if I've never dated outside of my current relationship? And so um, I've always dismissed myself and been maybe bi-curious, maybe just curious, but I didn't want to full on say bisexual because I thought that it wasn't right, or I thought that I wasn't there yet, or that I needed to prove it to myself first. So in communities where like LGBTQ communities, like clubs or something that I would want to join, sometimes I would think ahead and think of what people would think if I came out and was just bisexual, and then when asked about it, I don't know. I assume people would say that I wasn't under that umbrella. I didn't count. I couldn't use that word. So again, it took me a minute to accept myself and kind of take that step without needing anybody's approval. So
So, what does it feel like emotionally to have figured out your identity? And do you feel happy and empowered in your identity?
it was confusing, and then it was kind of just relieving knowing that I wasn't what's the word? I don't know, weird, or I wasn't, I don't know. I was just really relieved that it was okay for me to identify as that and that I didn't need anybody's approval. And what was the second part of that question? I'm sorry.
So do you feel like you're happy to have figured out your identity?
I do. I just, one less thing to worry about. I enjoy knowing that I can relate to other people. That, as cliche as it sounds, I'm not alone.
So where do you find queer joy?
Honestly, in music, in artists that I like or I follow, it's really, it's makes the music more enjoyable when I know it's someone that identifies the same as me or feels the same as me, makes songs that relate to me, and it's really rewarding knowing that they're out there, that they're big, and that they're um, singing or talking about stuff that not a lot of people do. I think so. I think that's where I find my joy the most from, just being able to relate to people that, in my eyes, are these idols. And knowing that if I ever, for whatever reason, sat down to talk to them, we'd have something to relate to or talk about.
Any musical artists in particular you're thinking about?
Mm, honestly, the first ones that came to mind were people that I don't think are even fully out, but have just kind of hinted at it. One's Harry Styles. He's always been, even if he's just an ally, he's always been really supportive of the community, which is really cool. Another one is I think Sabrina Carpenter. Um, Billie Eilish is a really big one in my playlist. Um, a lot of people I don't even fully um, gravitate to. I kind of just I listen to a lot of artists. Those are just the first ones that came to mind because I really like their performances or how they interact with their community.
So far, what do you find to be the most challenging about being queer? Or do you use the word queer to identify, to refer to yourself? Or do you feel comfortable with me using that word?
I'm okay with it. I don't use it to identify myself, but I don't mind it.
Okay, so what do you find the most challenging so far?
I think the most challenging is just dismissing that self doubt or self questioning all the time, even just with myself, like feeling like I'm enough. I think that's been the hardest part because, again, I always fear that people will question me for it or question whether or not being fully accepted just because I don't have anything to back it up or anything to prove my sexuality. So I think that's always been like the hardest part for me. Mm-hmm.
So you said that religion played a role in your life growing up, or you said your parents are Catholic. So can you talk a little bit about that background? So what kind of role did religion play growing up, and how did you come to sort of identify as spiritual um, rather than Catholic? Or I don't know if maybe you still identify with the word Catholic. But.
Mm. Growing up, I I mean, I identified as Catholic just because that's what was engraved with me for such a long time. Um, it wasn't even like going to church every Sunday or the usual Catholic routine. It would just be the word. Like we were Catholic. I saw a bunch of crosses around my house and frames and pictures and things like that. We would go on like really specific days for whatever holiday or tradition. But then it was kind of a turning point in high school. My parents went to like a matrimonial retreat where they just went and kind of got to renew their vows in a way. And they came back and it was just like a switch. They became really into it. They got really into it. Suddenly they were going out on like retreats to bring in more matrimony and then help them out in their journey. And for them, it was during a time when they were kind of struggling a little bit, matrimony wise. They were marriage wise. They were bumping heads a lot, and a lot of arguing was going on. And I think they both came to a point where if that didn't heal them or fix them, that it was possible to call it quits. So when they came back and they were completely different, it was nice to see them not argue as much. But it freaked me out because all of a sudden they were leaving, and we were going to mass every Sunday, and we were praying the rosary every night, and the rules seemed to be getting stricter. Not wearing shorts to mass, or not wearing tank tops to school, or not just it was a lot by then, because I had already grown up in a somewhat Catholic home compared to like a more extreme Catholic home. And by then I was 17, so in my head I was like, I shouldn't be forced to do all these things now that I'm almost an adult. So they tried to engrave it in me as much as they could before I was 18, because as soon as I did turn 18, I kind of took my stand, and I just told them I didn't like being forced into something that I didn't even really truly believe in. I didn't like the rules, or I didn't like the way it was. Like, if you were this, you were going to hell. If you were that, you were going to hell. Like, regardless of what you believed in, or regardless of how good of a person you were, it felt like whatever I believed in was just wrong, and that I was damned if I believed it. So I didn't like it. I tried to defend my beliefs, defend my morals, and it was just any turning point. It was just, you need to pray more. You need to believe. You need to this, you need to that. So I think that really turned me off, because it's just like a blind belief has never been good for me. If there isn't something I can see, or if there isn't something I can, what's the word? I think it was just based on my morals alone. I was hearing a lot of what's the word? Pro life statements. I was hearing a lot of anti LGBT, anti trans community, anti everything, that I was just getting tired of defending or having to explain that it wasn't wrong, that I didn't see anything wrong, and they were seeing stuff that I didn't even, they were saying stuff that I didn't even believe in. So I think it was hard to continue down a Catholic route when all that was said to me was that if you didn't fully support pro-life, or if you didn't fully support what's the word, conversion therapy, things like that, it was, you weren't a true Catholic. Which is funny to me, because I was like, I'd rather not be at all then, because that's all, like, it was hard trying to explain myself and just being turned down every second. So they respected my opinions and my point of views, so they stopped forcing it on me, and it was really nice. Like, Sundays would always bring me so much anxiety, because I knew it was a day to go to church, a day to sit there for like an hour listening to some dude explain the Bible and all this stuff, and it was just really, I'd sit there, and I don't think there was ever a time where I went where I didn't shake my leg the whole time. It was just so much anxiety. It was very anxiety inducing. And then I found spirituality in general.
So how did you come into your spirituality?
Honestly, online. I think it was during the pandemic, and again, I was doing a lot of self-discovering during that time. And weirdly enough, I was on TikTok a lot, watching videos and stuff, and I started seeing a lot of videos on just spirituality. At first it was people collecting crystals. And then I thought they were really cool, and I've always been a rock collector. So so I thought it was even cooler. I was like, shiny rocks, awesome. And then I started learning the meaning behind them, and I started learning that they had, certain meaning to each person, and I got really into it. So I started collecting crystals and kind of finding how I felt about it, trying to see if they did anything for me. At first, they did. I was really into tarot reading and kind of in general. I think I would identify my spirituality as kind of, I believe in the universe. I believe in karma. I believe in just kind of, we're all interconnected in that way. We're all kind of what's the word? I don't know. We all came from stars in a way. So in my mind, I don't know. I think it's the universe is ginormous, and I believe there's something out there. I just don't know what. All I know is that if you're good, good will come to you. So that's been a really big one for me. Yes.
Anything else you want to say about religion and spirituality before we move on to the next section?
It's really hard to identify yourself in an LGBTQ plus standpoint when growing up in a toxic religious household. It's, I think, what kind of stopped me from finding it out sooner. I think had it not affected me the way it did in high school, I would have found out sooner. I would have related to people differently. I would have made different friends. So in that way, I wish it hadn't affected me in high school like it did. But also I don't think I want to go back. I like the way my life is, so it's a give and take.
So, you talked about being an immigrant, and your parents are immigrants as well. So, how has your life been shaped by, like, how was growing up shaped by the fact that you were an immigrant? I know it's a big question.
I think I've always grown up with a different value on certain stuff. I valued like the most minimal things because I didn't have it growing up. And so when I would see other kids or other classmates undermine their belongings or brush off certain stuff that I never in a million years thought I would have, it bugged me a lot. It would always kind of send me in like a internal jealousy rage. I don't think I really ever envied people for what they had or compared myself to them, because I've always been taught at an early age to be grateful for what I had regardless. And I think growing up as an immigrant, it was, for me, my biggest fear was always letting my parents down. I think I always held my parents' views on my education or my career choices really high. And to this day, I still take their pride into consideration. Everything I do, I always think, what would they think? Regardless of any other things in my identity, I think growing up as an immigrant, all you want to do is never make them regret their decision to give you a better life. For them, they immigrated here for that reason. They wanted to give me a better opportunity, more opportunities, more chances at being something bigger than they were. So I've never wanted to take it for granted.
So they moved here for economic reasons.
Yes.
And if you don't, do you mind talking about what they do for a living, or what did they do, or like maybe that's evolved over time too? But
My dad's always done construction, remodeling. He's always worked independently, and I've always admired him for it because I know that he does a good job because he gets calls from people out of the city to get him to remodel stuff for him, and he does, I think, a little of everything. He does carpentry, electricity, roofing, just anything to do with construction and remodeling. I know he can do. My mom, on the other hand, didn't work while I was growing up. Growing up, he had a very toxic, masculine thought of like women shouldn't work, and so my mom wasn't really allowed to, I guess, work growing up. However, there came a point where he was okay with it. We were going through a little more of a financial struggle, and so it seemed really, really dumb to not get out of that mindset. So my mom started working secretly behind his back at first. She does housework. She does house cleaning. She does what's the word for it? House cleaning, is that the word?
I think so.
Well, she does house cleaning. She started off with just friends and people close by, who'd be too busy to do simple cleaning and stuff. So she would help them out, and it became a bigger thing. So eventually, she had to tell him, and he couldn't even be mad because she was helping out, and he noticed that it was pointless to think she couldn't do what he could do too. So she got into housework and house cleaning, and she's doing that to this day as well.
So what about language stuff? So growing up, did you feel like you had to, or were you put in a position where you had to like translate for your parents and that sort of thing?
Yes. Growing up, I was signed up for preschool at like 4 or 5. So all my classes, from like preschool was all in English. I would have a tutor in case I didn't understand something. I remember being separated from class outside to take these like tests, test my English abilities and how they were developing. So I think by the time I was in 2nd grade, I was fluent. And it was really funny growing up because I would get stuck reading tax documents or bills or more adult stuff and being forced to translate it. And then I think it's a really funny similarity in the Latino community who are immigrants, because we all have the same memory of being yelled at if we didn't know how to translate something. I remember my parents just saying, like, what do you go to school for then? Like, how do you not know what this means? And you're a little 6-year-old, you don't know how to explain this tax document says you need to go to the bank or stuff like that. And so it's really funny. But yes, I was kind of the go-to translator for everything. I feel like a secretary sometimes because I know all their medical documents, I know their financial documents, I know my sister's documents, and my dad not so much. My dad, I think, caught on to English very quickly. He was here before even my mom and me were. So if you're working with mostly Americans, it's kind of impossible to not pick up on English. So he definitely speaks pretty well, pretty fluent in my opinion. My mom, however, she's always been very sorry. That was a fuzz. My mom has always been more defiant when it comes to wanting to learn English. I think it's a pride thing. I think she doesn't want to lose her Mexican identity. So to her, learning English is like giving up on her culture, which I've always respected. But because of that, I'm still at 22. I'm still called to ask about certain things or how to say certain stuff. Um, but yeah, growing up, I was definitely the translator of the family.
Did you ever witness your parents being treated with disrespect because of language barriers?
Yes. Which was really hard because I'm not a very confrontational person. I if I can, I will do what I can to keep the peace regardless of what the subject is. But I can't say I'm not confrontational when it comes to seeing people, even if they're not family, be disrespected for something as simple as not knowing how to say something in English. I think it's even more disrespectful to call someone out on that, especially when they're trying. I've seen even my mom say it in English and I can understand it, and I know other people can understand it. When she wants a doctor's appointment, she'll call and she'll say it in English, and I'm like behind the screen, like applauding. I'm like, yes, you did it. And then having the other person on the line go, what? And I know you can understand her because I can understand her and other people can understand her. And I feel like sometimes people do it out of just to be mean. Like, I didn't get that. I didn't understand it. Or they'll make her repeat it again like 3 times. And she gets frustrated and she prefers, at the end of the day, if people are like that with her, at the end of the day, she'll just, can I get someone to speak Spanish on the line? And she'd rather just not speak it. And it's really frustrating because it's like it shouldn't matter, but to a lot of people it does, and it's really frustrating seeing that growing up, and mostly seeing them not be able to defend themselves because they don't speak it, because there's that language barrier. It's really hard hearing about it later on, like, oh, this lady made a face when I couldn't say so and so. Like, not being there to like say something, it was always like out of my hands.
So, I think, we're currently through US history. There's been a lot of anti-immigrant sentiment, but in recent years it's been like quite bad, especially with the election of Trump, but even before that, and then even now, right, there's a lot of anti-immigrant sentiment. So how has that affected you and your family?
I think it heightened, definitely heightened when Trump was elected. I remember, well, we actually cried when that happened because it was so frustrating to see my parents, because they're immigrants, they can't vote. Therefore, it is literally out of their hands. And I was in high school when we found out, and at least in my high school, I went to CK McClatchy, and so I think it was a lot of the majority of the school was Latino, which was really, it was nice, but also it was really frustrating that day for a lot of people. I remember I walked out of class at one point and you just had kids blasting. I don't know if I can curse.
You can say it. I know what you're going
Okay. They were blasting "fuck Donald Trump" on their phones and through the hallways, and even after class. It was funny in the moment, but it was also because people were so upset, and even people's true colors were showing because the way professors would react told us everything we needed to know. That we weren't allowed to talk about politics, with professors, but
Are you talking about your high school teachers?
yes.
Yeah.
But it was the way they reacted to how we reacted that would let us know who they inevitably voted for, and it told us everything. And so it was even more annoying because it was like, if your class is mostly Latinos, and we'd find out that you might have voted for him, it even felt like kind of a broken trust a little bit, because I think I got along with most, if not a lot, of my high school teachers. So it was even that like sense of, do you not think I belong here? Like, do you not think I'm like, do you see yourself in like a hierarchy that I'm at the bottom of? Like, it was really frustrating. And then getting home and complaining about my day to my parents, and then them debating going back because they were afraid that if things were already rough, would they get rougher? Would people get violent? Would people be more vocal about their hatred? It was really frustrating, and it was like an angry cry. I cried that day, and it was just out of frustration, and the fact that my parents even debated going back was frustrating. Hearing that alone was an anger I can't describe. Like, go back to your country was just so like foreign to me. It was so like, especially for me, I grew up here. I was born in Mexico, but I was raised here. So hearing that was just so, like, I wasn't even raised there. If I go back, I would not know a thing because really wasn't raised there, and it was just weird. It was a really weird time.
So a lot of the same people who support anti-immigrant policies also are support policies like anti-LGBTQ policies. So I don't know what my question is exactly. What's my question about that? It's sort of like, I mean, you're living your life at this intersection, right? Mm-hmm. You are immigrant yourself, your parents are immigrants, and you also identify as LGBTQ. So have you kind of thought about, how has that impacted you, I guess?
For me personally, I think it's having to deal with the ignorance. It's having to deal with people's disregard for topics like that, because the same people making the rules or passing the laws or not passing the laws for our community, LGBT community, immigrant community, it's the people who don't know a thing. They hear something and they go, oh yeah, no, like, don't pass that. But they don't actually know. They don't research. They're old white men who don't they don't know enough about the subject to even be voting on it or to even be making the laws on stuff like this. And it's until we don't get more inclusivity or more representation in our government, it's not going to change. And that's what's frustrating. It's the same topic of wanting to change, of people getting into the government because we're going to do something different, and then nothing happening is a cycle that's going to continue until we don't get that representation that we need for our laws to be passed.
So do you have family in Mexico?
I do, yes. My mom's side of the family is in Mexico, and my dad's side is here. So
are you in touch? Do you send money? Does your family send money, or how does that work?
We do. We stay in touch as much as we can. My mom would make Skype calls growing up. That was really big. She'd make Skype calls or Voo. What was it? Voo? I think it was just Voo. Another app to like face call, and it was really wow. It was like because at first it was just kind of phone calls. Video calling wasn't really popular growing up until Skype was a thing, and we learned how to Skype, and it was just really emotional for my mom seeing my grandma and stuff after years. But they send money occasionally. I know that they kind of prepare for any day when we have to just move back. They're kind of always on the ready. So they send money for them, but they also send money just for us as like an emergency fund type. But they try to keep in contact as much as they can because it's family, and it's important to keep each other updated on whatever's going on. Especially my grandma. She went through like a phase of kind of being vulnerable when it comes to her health. She's really going through an unhealthy phase, and she was going to do a lot of doctor's appointments, so it's always important for us to keep in touch. Mm-hmm.
So when it comes to education, what's your, well, I don't know. You talked a little bit about your experience in high school around the election of Donald Trump. Um, Actually, I'll save the education questions for a little later, maybe,
Okay.
or more education questions. So you talked a little bit about your class background. Um, so did your family struggle financially when you were growing up?
Yes. We actually didn't live in our own like home until I was in middle school. We lived with my grandparents. We lived with an aunt or an uncle. We kind of just always shared rent with somebody because it was just impossible to rent a home in California back then without having like a steadier financial income. And since it was just my dad working, it was even more difficult. But he's he's always made it work. He was always the sole like bread and the money. I forgot the word.
Breadwinner.
He was always the breadwinner. So it was definitely harder for us, but again, he was really good at what he did. So I don't think we ever really worried about him running out of work. It was just a matter of whether or not he could finish and move on. Mhm.
So how are you doing economically right now as you are attending college?
Right now, I think we're. I mean, by now we have a routine. We have like a we know how to save our money wisely and what to spend it on and what to wait out on, things like that. I think it taught us a lot about what was it? Taught us how to be more financially secure. Especially recently, about a year ago, my dad had an accident where he fell off a roof and broke his knee and both of his ankles. So that was a really tough time because, again, he was the sole breadwinner in the family, and it was really hard to even see how we were going to pay our rent alone, let alone medical bills and everything else. So my mom really took the reins, and I have never seen someone girl boss as hard as her. Uh, we have a lot of family here, though. We have a lot of family friends, and I mean, through help of donations alone, we started selling food just in our backyard. We would host little events and sell enchiladas or sell typical Mexican food. And again, with just our family support alone, we managed to get by decently well. Um, and they said that my dad wouldn't walk for at least a year. He ended up walking 6 months later. So it was just, I think the stress off his shoulders, how we were gonna survive financially, is what helped him kind of de-stress and heal quicker, in my opinion. Um, and so now I think we're more financially secure. We learned how to be more financially secure for in case of emergencies and for me that I'm in college, my first 2 years of college were paid off. I had the grant, Cal B grant, I believe. So I didn't worry about paying for classes and stuff, not even textbooks. It was all kind of paid for me. I actually was able to get my first laptop with that grant. It was really cool. And so I didn't really worry till about my third year. Um, and then I skipped a semester because it was during a time I really did not know what I wanted to do. And it felt like a waste just coming to class and not knowing what I wanted to do. So after I came back, my classes weren't paid for anymore. So I occasionally go to work with my mom, or I have a friend who sells food, and so I go and help her out and just learning to save and save. And so I pay off for my classes, and
And you're living with your parents.
I do.
So did that financial stress like impact how you were doing in the classroom? Were you like struggling a little bit in the classroom because of that?
I think so. Or yeah, I did, just because I didn't like not being home, especially when my mom kind of took the weight of that. Um, it happened late. It happened last October was the accident. So I was middle of my fall semester. So it was really stressful. And I had just planned a trip with my boyfriend's family to Disneyland, and it was like a week away. And so when his accident happened, it was the week before. So I wasn't even gonna go anymore. I was gonna stay home, and I mean, we didn't know how much help he was gonna need. So I wasn't not planning on going anymore. But he came home. He actually had a surgery on his knee on his birthday.
Happy birthday.
Right? They said he was gonna have it the 16th, but the surgeon wasn't available. And when they saw his record and saw his birthday was the 18th, the surgeon apparently made time to through his day to go and help him out because he was like, it's unfair to just have him there in pain on his birthday. Like I'll do it. So that was his birthday gift, I guess. But yeah, he came home, and I call my dad RoboCop because he's had so many injuries throughout the years. He's had his main artery vein. He cut himself with a saw. So he had this whole vein just chopped. He has a giant scar right here. He's had so many nails like just go through his hands, and he's popped his shoulder out so many times. I call him RoboCop. He gets hurt all the time, but this one was the biggest he's ever gotten. But he came home and he was a champ about it. He if anything, he was more frustrated that he couldn't help out, help us out and stuff. But he was really good about his what's it called, his physical therapy and stuff. And so I wasn't too worried in school. I was mainly worried about whether or not my mom needed support. But even my mom was really, whatever emotion she felt, she kind of put it aside and got to work and pushed me to leave. She was like, just go on the trip, like we'll be fine. And as much as I hesitated, I was like, I do feel bad. It was all paid for. I didn't pay for the trip at all. And so I was going to feel really mean being like, sorry guys, can't go. That money's lost. So that was like, I guess. So I went and I came back, and nothing had really changed. He was still in bed and couldn't move. So
You went to the happiest place on earth?
I did. I went to the happiest place on earth, and I got him a little keychain to make him happy.
Okay, let's get into the education section. So very broad, but can you tell me about your educational journey from high school to the present?
Education journey? I went to C.K. McClatchy High School. I was in the Criminal Justice Academy all 4 years. Yeah, that was that was the thing. And then I graduated May of 2019, and I applied here that the previous fall, and I got accepted. So I have been coming here to Sac City since 2019. Don't know how many years that is.
And what is the Criminal Justice Academy?
The Criminal Justice Academy in high school was an academy for students, otherwise known as cadets in the academy, who were interested in criminal law, criminal justice, any under that umbrella, any sort of career choice, police officer, what was the other one? Just anything under like just the police academy, you would apply and you would attend, and it was like it's like an actual police academy, at least in my opinion. Like all of our lessons, all of our classes were focused towards that. So we took history classes. All of our classes were together. So you had the same classes with the same people. It's one of the few things that I regret, just because I did not get to meet that many people. Whoever's in the academy is basically your friend, and that was it, unless you were in some other club or something. But yeah, we had what was it? Our English. Was it our English? Our English was with that class, so it was all based off just like Sacramento, specifically Sacramento, just the police academy for Sacramento. But yeah, we went on different field trips to different what's it called? Different areas to learn more about what they did, and we got to learn a lot about their perspective on certain topics, certain videos that would go viral. Police brutality was a big one. Yeah, it was really interesting. Like I get the same reaction when I tell other people. It's I guess not like heard of, which was weird for me because I was in it for like 4 years. So yeah, we had a uniform. It was like an actual like police officer uniform. It was like a light blue long sleeve. It had a patch right here. It was the navy like they had to be could not be wrinkled. You had to have your hair up. We had the tie, we had the clip, we had the boots. It was like the whole shebang. Yeah.
Did you like it? What was it? Yeah.
To be quite honest with you, I had to join it mainly because I had applied for West Campus. I went to Sutter Middle School, and from there, that was like my dream school because my best friend was going there. So I was like, I need to go to West Campus. But we took the test, and then it's like a raffle after that. So I didn't make the raffle, and I didn't have a backup school. Since I applied myself, I didn't know you were supposed to apply to more than one school. So I only applied to that one. So my home school was Hiram Johnson, I believe, and Mom really didn't want me to go there. So my cousin was going to McClatchy, and his mom helped us a ton. And she was like, the only way you can go there is if you apply to one of their academies. And he had applied to the Criminal Justice Academy, so I was like, cool. There wasn't any room left, so I met up with the teacher, and him and my aunt, my godmother, were pretty cool. So they were a little lenient with letting me in, and I guess I stayed after that. I could have moved. I could have done a different academy, but at that point, I had already made friends, and I had already done the whole thing, so I stayed.
And do they have a similar academy at other public high schools?
Yeah, they have it at Hiram Johnson. They have it at Kennedy. They have it at, I don't know any of the high schools. But from my knowledge, yeah, because we had we had a thing called Quiz Bowl, and we had what's it called? It was our version of a prom, but it was just the criminal justice academies, and so we would see the other schools and stuff, and it was.
And how old were you when you started?
I was 14 going on 15, and I graduated 2019. I was 18. So 15 through 18, 14 through 18.
What kind of jobs are you being prepared for?
Mainly it was, focused on like police officers, like a police officer type of job. But it ranged anywhere from the K-9 unit to working in like actual like prisons, like as guidance counselors or security officers or anything of the sort. It was really interesting, but realistically, it wasn't anything. It influenced my choice of career for a little bit because it's all you're hearing. So I wanted to be in the K-9 unit for a minute, and then I graduated and I got a bigger scope on things, and I was like, no.
So who taught classes?
We had an actual English professor, and it was a conjoined, like it was a co-taught class with an actual police officer, who was kind of always on campus, and he would do the lectures on actual like police unit stuff.
I don't know. I'm so shocked by this.
No,
I did not know this was a thing.
It really is, and I really don't know how to explain it. It really influences you because it's like you get inside knowledge on criminal law and stuff like that. It was weird to me though because we also had a LPPA, and I'm pretty sure that's a law like for actual law, like an academy, which I was always intrigued by because that goes more into actual law, more into history, more into the government, stuff like that. And in my head, it was CJA for those who are interested in criminal justice, so police officers. Then there was the Law Academy, which is more like if you want to be like a lawyer or of the sort, an attorney. But we also had ROTC. I'm not sure if you know what that is.
Yes, I know
Okay,
what that is. Yeah.
and that's specifically for like military and any Army, Navy type. So we like it was like different branches of stuff. So it was like I don't know, it's just weird. But we had all that, and then we had but it was like theater and arts and stuff like that, which I wish I had applied to, but it was I didn't know it was an option until I started going to school there. But yeah, VP I think it was called. But yeah, that one.
McClatchy's the high school in Freeport.
Yes, literally right here. Yeah.
So what's the racial and gender makeup of that academy?
For my class specifically, it was also weird too though, because if you weren't accepted freshman year, it was very hard to get in sophomore, junior, senior year. Like whoever was in our class freshman year is exactly who we graduated with senior year. And I know because my boyfriend tried joining sophomore and junior, and he was turned away both times. So it was like, I don't know, it was really weird. Like if you weren't in, you weren't in. I don't know, but for my class in particular, we had a lot of Latinos, and we had African American. We had, honestly, the majority was not white, which was interesting. But we had, I would say, a pretty diverse class. I want to say evenly split male female, but I think it was definitely carried by the females in the class, because a lot of in our academy we had ranks. So there was lieutenant, there was captain, there was same way the rankings go in like an actual police academy. We had that in our class, and so it would give you different responsibilities. I think I only ever reached what was it? I think I was lieutenant, and you would be referred to as your last name, Lieutenant Cornejo or Lieutenant. My best friend was also Lieutenant Gonzalez, and you would only refer to yourself as that. And same way, other classmates would refer to you as that. And again, a weird power trip too, because if you weren't friends with like the captain, for example, like uniform days when the captain of whatever the class was would have to review your uniform, and if anything was at a spot, if they were captain, you had that leniency of like, don't do it again, I won't mark you down type stuff. But if you weren't, then they tended to be more strict. But yeah, for us, most, if not all of our higher rankings were females, which is really cool. But also, it was like, I don't know if we tried harder because we were females. I'm not sure, but our captains, our lieutenants, and our there's something under that, and I can't remember what it was, but they were mostly females.
So how did the racial makeup of that academy compare to the general racial makeup of the school, the high school itself? I guess I'm wondering if there are more students of color being recruited into the academy.
You know, I think so. And I think so because our actual, the police officer who was like he has a name. There was like a ranking for him. But he was African American. So I want to say there was a little bias when accepting students. And I say that because I knew him for 4 years. So the only thing I did really appreciate about it was that we got to know each other really well. And we didn't really have a choice. It was either you knew each other or you didn't. And by the end of 4 years, you're friends regardless. So when it came to with him, I don't want to like name drop, so let's say officer. We called him officer and then his last name. With him, I mean, we got to know him all 4 years, so we had that like really, we had a pretty cool connection with him. But we also got to know him on like that kind of level that we knew he was a little biased when it came to even rankings or who he let in, and I want to say he definitely tried his best to recruit as many people of color because he knew that in the real world that's not very common. So
Do you
that
think
was
part of it was trying to, like, if you recruit more people of color into police work, then racial bias in policing will be lessened? Or
I want to say that was his mentality, maybe, because we had a whole unit on, again, police brutality, and it was biased in the way that he hated that people assumed that it was solely because of racial identity, or racial what's the word? Like he had a really big thing about this was before the George Floyd topic too. It was like he saw it coming. I don't know, but
well, there was a Black Lives Matter movement before George Floyd.
yeah. But there was also a video that had gone viral of a police officer in, I want to say, Mississippi, Minnesota, something like that. It was all caught, and it was a short video, but it was very, at least from what you could tell, it seemed kind of police brutality like, and he didn't let him speak, and the victim was a person of color, and the officer was very much white. So he showed it in class, asked us on our viewpoints what we got out of the video, and then showed us a full video of the police officers, I think either camera footage or something, but it was like a full video where it shows him being disobedient, it showed him being aggressive, and everything that you would assume is bad when it comes to being detained. So he would then explain to us that we should not be easily influenced when it came to that sort of thing, because it was harmful for the police officers to be seen as biased, especially when all they wanted to do was protect the community. And so it was really weird, but it was also like he was very open about Blue Lives Matter before it was even as big as it got. He would even like
open in what sense?
Like open in the sense of that, like, police officers were the ones in danger because they were seen like they were under a bigger lens. They were held up to a certain responsibility, as they should, in my opinion, but they were held to a certain standpoint where if they did any minimal thing that could be seen as inappropriate or going too far, that they're the ones that go through that, like, judgment, like negative judgment. But I don't know. He would give us warnings about. He was very vocal about just being safe.
Was he critical of Blue Lives Matter?
He was.
Or was he trying to say that Blue Lives Matter
was important?
Oh.
That it was important, and that we shouldn't be influenced by the negative viewpoints of police. That, like, we should. Like, if we heard anything negative when it came to the police academy, that we should be more open-minded and ask the questions of, like, well, what did so-and-so do? Like, not question the police officer, rather question why he did what he did type. So he would, like, I don't know, but it was, like, even our uniforms. He'd be very wary about us wearing them outside of class because we were the ones in danger. Because we would be seen as... he used a lot of slang. We would be seen as, I don't know, like, bad cops. Regardless of whether or not we were good or bad, we would be seen as bad people for even wearing it outside. And it was only because I think we had one incident where a student was beat up. He was kind of ganged up on and beat up, and they assumed it was because he was wearing the uniform. I don't know any outside knowledge about maybe he did something else. I don't know, but those in charge assumed that it was because he was wearing the uniform and because he was training to be an actual police officer. So he would warn us about being safe, about not wearing our uniform outside class. I don't know. But now that once I graduated and stuff and I got a bigger viewpoint on just everything in general, it's definitely a little weird having all that knowledge, and then it's like hearing about actual cases of police brutality, and I don't know, it's kind of engraved in you to think about both sides, but in my head it's just, I don't know, I really don't.
Well, it's because it's interesting, because it's like, in one way, you're seeing the recruitment of students of color, right, disproportionately into this program, perhaps with the idea of reducing racial bias in policing.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, you're being told that what people are saying about racial bias might not be true. So, are students of color being recruited into the police academy to perpetuate white supremacy, or are they being recruited? Are they recruited for optics? Like, what's happening there? Right? There's a little bit of a.
I still feel weird about it. So yeah, I don't.
Yeah.
It's definitely weird, just because it's yeah, and I mean for a minute too, even the students felt like there was bias, and again how he ranked us, because for a minute it was just students of color who were being promoted to lieutenant or captain or whatever, until he recruited my friend who was a white girl, and so I don't know. Part of me felt like he did it just to kind of shut us up a little bit, but even then, it was just people knew that he was being more lenient towards those of color. And again, we didn't mind because it did come with more responsibilities, and we were totally okay with just not having any. But we I don't know. And during that time, you don't really think about it. Like it doesn't really like if it doesn't affect you personally, it doesn't affect you at all. Type. That's how that's how I thought. And yeah, I mean, students in class would do everything they could to only wear the uniform during the class time, that one period. And then as soon as we got out, some would run to the bathroom, take off the uniform, because it was like embarrassing to just like even be seen in it. Sometimes it was just like we were the only academy that even had a uniform besides ROTC. But ROTC was understood because like they wanted to do something with military, and it was, I don't know, at least in my school, I feel like it was taken more seriously compared to like the CJA. I don't know. It was weird. So
were you taking classes with only students in the Criminal Justice Academy, and so you weren't in the general student population? Huh. So that really influenced.
The only classes I think we had that were like your own was science and whatever elective. Until our junior year, they influenced the dean or whoever was in charge to give us our own science class, and it was the only class I think I ever loved. It was a forensic class, and it was the coolest class ever because we got to learn actual science behind stuff, like forensic lab stuff, the splatter of blood shots, and like all this like really CSI type stuff. And it was really cool. My friend was influenced to go into CSI, and I think she's still doing that, and it was a really interesting subject in general. And again, it was only for our class, so we felt really cool even taking it. But yeah, in a sense, it was really isolating because it was just the academy. Like you could not take like outside classes. It had to be like the same professor, the same period. You could not really make friends unless you were a part of something else outside of the academy.
So did students fail out of the academy?
No, you can't really.
I mean, they fail individual classes more like that.
No, not. I don't know. I don't think anyone in our academy failed, for example, because you also had to maintain a certain grade to even be in it. And as soon as anyone noticed it was dropping the slightest, they would kind of be on you, and like if you needed tutoring, tutor you, or if you needed more influence or more help, they provided it, which was nice. But I don't know. I think even as an academy itself, we kind of motivated each other, weirdly enough. So we were kind of always there for one another. I mean, regardless, we still had students who were kind of on the lower grade level, but every class we took, we all like went at the same time. We were all on the same pace, yeah.
So it sounds like, I wonder if you had more support in the academy than you would have if you were in the general population in terms of making sure that you passed your classes.
We definitely did. I think we definitely did, and we also had a lot of support when it came to figuring out college stuff. That was really big. Even beginning of junior year, we were already getting talked about what college we were going to, how to transfer, how to apply to scholarships. We had we had a lot of help with that, which I appreciate to this day because it really they really gave us that support when a lot of kids don't. So it was helpful in that sense. But also, that's when a lot of recruitment started for actual like Army, Navy, Marines, all this stuff. Just
Through your academy.
yeah, for like every other week we had some sort of on campus, like they would come in, talk to us, like give us pamphlets. And I mean, majority of us were influenced because at the time they're like, we'll pay for your school, we'll do this, we'll do that. And so it's like it's really hard to say no, especially when all you're hearing is they're going to pay for your stuff and you are lower income. Like that is the biggest influence. My best friend, who's now in Vancouver, joined the Navy specifically because she was majorly influenced by getting all her classes paid.
And we're talking about low income, disproportionately students of color being
Yeah,
against the military.
I don't want to say it, but we're thinking the same thing. So, I mean, yeah, as much as it influenced you to apply and go to college and all this stuff, you were hearing it. We took the ASVAB, which is the test you take in high school to like see how you qualify when it comes to Army stuff and whatever. Me and my best friend took it, and I don't know, I still feel weird about it because I took it and they looked at my grade and they were like, oh my god, did you know you scored like a lot higher than like the average high schooler and blah 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 blah. And like you feel really like, oh wow, like I'm so smart. But then my best friend was like, yeah, they said the same thing to me, and I'm like, did we even get the same score? Like, are they just saying that to like say it? It was so weird, but it was, I don't know. She ended up going and I didn't, and I ended up going to Sac City, and it's just our experiences are so unique and just different. We'll talk about it, and she's like, I wish I never applied, but also she has the financial security, financial freedom that she always wanted in high school. So
it's interesting because you have more academic support, but you're also being tracked into careers that aren't academic in nature either. Well, for the most part, right? Mm-hmm. You're not being tracked to become teachers or lawyers or doctors.
At all. We had we had this thing called a quiz bowl, and it was exactly what it sounds. It was like Jeopardy style, where they would ask you questions about captain of the police academy, like the actual Sacramento Police Academy, or different codes. We would memorize the codes of like actual police officers. Like code 404 means blah blah blah. Code 102 means blah blah blah. And it was like fast questions where yeah, you would press a button, you would answer, and then your school would get points. And then at the end, whoever won would get like this actual trophy, like a quiz bowl trophy. And it was like weird, but we memorized stuff like that. It was like, I don't know if it has not influenced me at all to this day. I have zero need for any of the knowledge that I received, but.
So were any of your courses in high school queer, trans, inclusive?
In high school, I think maybe a biology class that we had when it came to like sex ed briefly kind of talked about what it was like in the LGBT community, but it was not enough for me to like remember it or really remember what we discussed. It was just, I think we briefly discussed it because kids are very immature, and even the word gay is like funny, and I don't know, they don't take it seriously. So I think the professor was more as brief as she could be so it wouldn't be seen as something bad. So
okay. And were any of your classes inclusive of the Latina experience or the Mexican experience?
Not necessarily, not that I can remember now. I think a lot of the population at our school was Hispanic or Latino, but I don't remember a subject or a class where it was like spoken about or we learned history about it or anything. I think our history was kind of very white dominated when it came to the history of the country. So,
do you think the way that your classes was taught, like the fact that they weren't queer, trans inclusive, they weren't really inclusive of the Latino experience. Do you feel like that might have had something to do with that you were in the criminal justice academy, or do you think that was a fairly common thing? It's hard to say probably because you weren't in those other classes.
Yeah, it really is. I think when it came to our history class, it was the most inclusive it could be because we learned world history. So it was kind of, I mean, about Native Americans. It was about even the first Black president. It was kind of broad spectrum of different things. But because we had like a specific English course or a specific academy course, I don't even know if it was English. It was very biased and only really about the police academy. It wasn't inclusive at all about any other topic really. So I wouldn't really be able to compare it to any other course because I didn't take it either. It was all the same class.
Do you remember any of your teachers being queer, trans?
Queer or trans, no. I don't think so, no. But I think most, if not all of our professors were very ally friendly, I think. I don't think any of our teachers were ever really discriminatory towards it or verbally against it, you know. Not that they could be, but we could tell, and they never made, I think, any of us really feel uncomfortable or unsafe.
Did you remind me? Did you come out after high school?
Yes.
Okay. Was there any queer community in high school, like queer clubs?
Yes, actually, we had an actual LGBTQ plus club that I attended my junior year. And I attended because my best friend was out and she was really interested in it. And we went, I think, for the first 2 weeks, because it was once a week. We went for the first 2 weeks. And I think something about it made her uncomfortable, or she didn't like how it was. She thought it was too, what's the word, like isolated from a lot of the other clubs. So she just preferred not going anymore. And I only went because she went. We even had pins that they would let us wear, where it would either say ally or it would say L for lesbian, G for gay. Like if you wanted to, you didn't have to, but if you wanted to, just so that when you get in class, you can kind of look throughout the class and see if you related to anybody. A Q for questioning or queer type, and so it was nice, but it was just. I think it was too much for her at the time because she was still kind of learning about herself. So, I mean, I just kind of went as a support system. Had we stayed, I think we would have enjoyed it a little more, but she just, yeah. Besides that, I think we had a life club. I honestly don't even know what the actual topic of it was, but I think I remember some discourse about certain subjects in the LGBTQ plus community, and it was pretty supportive from what I can remember.
Do you remember what the racial makeup was of the LGBTQ club?
Yes, it was definitely mostly white from my knowledge. I think it was harder being in a school that was more leaning towards an Hispanic or Latino majority, because I think there's a lot of not fear, but it was definitely harder to come out or be open in fear of judgment. And when the majority of the LGBTQ plus community was white, I think that might have also influenced her kind of turn away, just not feeling racial. So racial diversity, I think that's also what it was a little.
Yeah, I ask because that's not an uncommon experience, sort of that finding that the clubs are too racially homogenous, particularly white, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that can feel not as welcoming for students of color.
Yeah, definitely, I think.
So have you oh wait, so, oh, go ahead.
Sorry, you had asked me about open professors or open teachers?
Yeah.
I do actually. Our biology teacher was openly, I think, either lesbian or bisexual, and she was actually the head of the LGBTQ plus community. It was in her classroom, so it was actually kind of cool because she was our biology teacher, and again, she's also the one that gave the slight brief on LGBTQ plus and sex ed. So yes, she was openly a part of the club and or part of the community. So it was really nice.
So, what do you think life was like? And I mean, maybe your friend also talked about this with you, like for queer students at McClatchy. So, and in your program, like, did queer students experience any harassment or discrimination, or did queer students have any issues with feeling like a full sense of belonging?
I think so. Mm, I think in high school generally, you get that sense or you get that feeling
Like what feeling?
of just like feeling not left out, but just feeling that I keep saying isolation, but that isolation of like not being able to be open, safely open. Um, I mean, in high school, you hear a lot of inappropriate jokes in general, but also a lot of you're gay if you do this or you're gay if you do that type. So when you do hear that someone's gay, like it threw people off, I think, sometimes because people, I don't think they really took it seriously enough or saw it as something that was to be taken serious. Um, so because I was so close to her, I did, I mean, hear a lot about her experiences and stuff. But also, she surrounded herself with a lot of, I think, supportive friends. So it wasn't ever anything that she was harassed for or made fun of for. I think because she surrounded herself with a healthy friendship, a group of friends, um, she was, I mean, safe to be open and safe to be vocal about it if she wanted to be. One of her closest friends was a gay man, so I mean, I think she was, she never really struggled with being open in high school, at least to my knowledge.
Okay, so since you've started community college, have you taken any courses that are either entirely focused on or in part focused on queer and trans topics?
Not at the moment. I haven't. Um, Mostly about racial identity. So I did take an Hispanic Latino history course, which was nice.
Is
But
that Chicano history?
yes. But I think because I didn't really identify myself as an actual, uh, not just ally, but in the LGBTQ plus community, I didn't really think to like I didn't really think that was an option for me. I don't know why. Um, but I definitely have interest in it. So I definitely think in the future I would be willing to or want to, just because it's something that um, I want to be. I can't be an ally if I don't at least support or learn about the history. So yes,
In your Chicano history class, were queer topics brought up at all?
not to my knowledge, I don't think so.
Did you take that class before you came up?
Yes,
When did you come up? I know.
I
What year was it?
I
You've
want to
been
say,
around the community college for a few years now, so yeah.
let's see, I think late 2019. I graduated 2019. My first semester was on campus, but I think my second semester is when the pandemic really hit, so everyone kind of was only online. And I think that when pandemic was 2020, late 2020,
Right. Okay.
I want to say is when I didn't, 2021. I want to be safe and say I was fully out 2021.
Like a couple of years then,
Yeah.
basically.
Mhm.
Okay. Do you remember taking any classes that even briefly touched on queer and trans topics, like English classes, sociology, anthropology? I mean, it's more typical for the maybe queer and trans topics to be briefly touched upon in like
Mhm.
humanities and social sciences, though it doesn't have to be just humanities and social sciences.
Yeah.
But do you remember anything even brief? And maybe sometimes it's just so fleeting that it's like easy not to remember too.
I think that's what it is. I think it's sometimes it's just so brief and like just a mere mention, so it's not enough to really remember or stick with you. So I don't want to say full on no because maybe they did and I just don't remember, but it still wasn't enough to stick with you or to really remember. And I think that's what's important is that if it's not mentioned enough for students to remember, for students to acknowledge when asked, even if it was a year ago, like clearly it needs some work. Even in high school, I couldn't remember one professor that was out or that was safely open until really thinking about it, really going back, and I'm like trying to put pieces together that I remembered, and that's just one out of like a whole school that I can openly remember.
Um, so you took that Chicano history class. Why did it feel important for you to take that class? Why did it feel meaningful?
Um, Honestly, I was in the SESI program when I first joined because I heard it was a good program to join for first comers. So since I was a first generation Latina in my family, the program really focused on Latinos in the STEM, any sort, and I was really into being a nurse or doctor at that time. So I was like, heck yeah, and I joined, and it was nice because you get to meet a lot of other students who are first first time in college at all, let alone first generation. So you got to meet a lot of people, and you did have that support system of like counselors whenever you needed one, or help when it came to what classes to take. And because it was for that program is the reason that our whole like cohort took that class. And it was nice because I mean, we alone, the majority of the class was Latino, so taking a history class on our Chicano culture was really cool that we got the chance to do that because it was first come first serve. So our class was automatically signed up for that class. So it was most of our class in that course.
And what does SESI stand for?
I honestly don't remember. It doesn't exist anymore.
Because there's Puente.
Because there's Puente and there's the Raza Center.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe SESI didn't get enough funds, so it had to join the other program, which I believe is the Raza program, some sort. It was joined, so SETI doesn't exist anymore. But I think it was STEM. Honestly, I'm not even sure.
Something about first generation STEM or
specifically
Latino students?
It was Latino students,
okay.
yeah. And it was for Latino students taking a career path in anything STEM wise.
Yeah, sometimes there's one-off funding for something that doesn't continue on.
Yeah. Yeah, I really can't remember the if I looked it up, I'll probably find it, but I can't. Yeah, I can't remember off the top of my head.
So aside from that, or I guess can you say like, I know you took Chicano history as part of that program, but upon reflection, why do you think it's important for the curriculum to be inclusive of the Latino experience?
I think it's important because without it, I don't think what's the word? Without the course, I don't think we would have learned about it otherwise outside of that history course. It's not really talked about in general history class. It's always very white history, if you will, let alone Native American history, Black history, Mexican history. So it's without it, you're not going to hear about it outside of the class. I didn't learn about Mexican history till that class, like preschool to senior year. It's not very common to hear about your culture's history, so it's important in general because I think it's good to hear about. It's good to know that your history does exist and that your history means something and that your history was studied and that there's knowledge on different subjects within it. So I don't know. I think especially if you didn't hear about it in high school, I think it's good to hear about it at some point in your life and just kind of learn your history. I think it's kind of cool.
So you said you might be interested in taking a queer class of some sort, so a class that includes queerness in some way.
Uh-huh.
What do you think, why do you think it might be important to take a class that's sort of more inclusive of the queer experience?
I think because I don't know, in my head I'm so late to the game. Like I didn't know my identity, or it didn't come out until 2021, which was recent. So I don't know. I feel like I want to learn more about the community. I mean, you can only learn so much online, so much through different accounts, or online through different people's life experiences, like people you follow. But I feel like it's different in a class, and it's different with other people who are also trying to learn, or have questions about it that can only really be answered sometimes in a specific class like that. So I think taking it would really give me another perspective, or another something else to learn about, which I like learning in general. So
Um, so how are you as a student in general? Like, do you ever struggle in your classes? How do you do in your classes?
I do well. I do okay. I am definitely not a straight A student, but I think when I take any class or any course that I'm taking with someone I already know, I do a lot better because I have someone in that class. We motivate each other. We remember to do this assignment or stuff like that. It's really helpful when you already know someone in the class, or you're on the same path a little bit, because again, there's that motivation, and there's that like one-on-one help if you really need it, compared to taking a class where you don't know anybody and it's maybe for a new career that you're just now kind of exploring. It's so hard to stay motivated, or to not bring yourself down. Like you're sometimes it feels like you're going too slow, and you compare yourself to other students who are almost graduating or already graduated, and it's like it feels hopeless sometimes. So I think I'm a good student. It's just if I don't have that motivation or that constant reassurance that I'm like I'm okay and I'm doing a good job and that everything's at my own pace, it's really hard to keep up with that.
Um, so when you do well in a course, or when you think about a course that you've done particularly well in, is there anything you can think of that like the professor did, and how they, what was the focus of the topics covered, the way the class was taught, anything in particular you can think of that helped you do well on the course, aside from having a friend?
Aside from having a friend, yes. There's when I get asked, I've been asked before if there's a professor or a teacher that I enjoy their class or enjoy their teaching in specific, especially now that I'm trying to be a teacher, even if it's for little kids. There's one that always comes to mind, and I will always appreciate him for it. He was our history teacher in high school, and he was just supportive. He was just a good teacher, I think, in my opinion. He was just there, even if it was outside of history. We would come to him with math problems, and like he was always down to help. He would never say no to you. He was very organized, and there's just something about it. Like it really was hard to fail his class unless you were that was your goal, like to fail, because he was just so supportive. And like if you missed an assignment, if you didn't do well on the quiz before anything, he was just, that's okay, there'll be another one, that's okay, like ask me if you have any questions. Like I don't know, I think he was just really supportive, and it just made you want to do good. Like it was really good to just do good. And so I mean, he would reserve a class period throughout the week to just study on an upcoming test. So he would put us into groups. He would assign seating because he liked putting kids who maybe weren't doing so good with kids who were, to like kind of learn from one another, which was really cool because again, why would you put kids who were already doing not so well together with other kids who aren't doing so well? So it was good, and it was just he liked putting us together to work in groups, and even if it was for like a worksheet that we could do together. It was most, if not the whole class, was based off of a book. So if you missed class, he whatever chapter it was, you could always just go back and read the chapter. I don't know, but he was just really supportive, and I don't know, his class always stuck with me because I don't think I've met a professor that has reached that kind of standard for me. In college, however, I want to say right now I'm taking a course. I'm taking ceramics, and I'm having a really positive experience with it because our professor is so supportive as well. He's very, what's the word? I mean, because it's ceramics, it's an art class, so he's just very like, do your own thing, like be creative, um, do whatever. Like he doesn't really turn down your ideas, and he walks by every once in a while. Do you need anything? I don't know. He's really funny too. He has that charisma. It's nice to see. Um, and yeah, like it's a kind of all at your own time. So it's like you really don't really feel that pressure, that rush to like if I don't get it done by now, like I'm gonna fail. So I want to say I don't know, just when professors or teachers are very supportive of their students or kind of do that. You don't have to like all your students, but if it feels like he likes all his students, that influences your wanting to learn or your want to do good in the class.
Have you ever, so have you taken any classes that aren't either partially or wholly focused on queer and trans topics where you felt like since you've come out that you felt like, oh, this feels like either a safe or relatively safe like space? Have professors done anything to make you feel that way?
Yes, actually, I took a film course last semester with a professor, and it wasn't really based on queerness or based on LGBTQ plus, but we briefly discussed some films or some movies where the actors were queer or the characters that they were playing were queer, and he was very openly supportive of it, or he was down to actually discuss, you know, straight actors who play queer characters and how that affects the community, how much representation matters when it comes to that sort of thing. Directors who are queer and how that affected their work. Like again, the class wasn't at all like about queerness, but he would bring up those topics that he was very openly supportive of. So it never did I question being out in his class and feeling unsafe, if not the opposite. It's really cool to see.
And I guess on the opposite side, have you been in classes where you're like, oh, I'm not coming out in this class, or this makes me feel uncomfortable for whatever reason, your queerness, your other identities, whatever reason?
I want to say yes. Mm, maybe not the professor, but just the people in the class. When it's male dominated and it's primarily white, I think that's when it's sort of harder to make friends alone, but also just kind of, I don't know, like, I think I always feel myself like shrinking a little bit, trying to not be seen for whatever reason. Maybe it is my internal gut telling me that I'm not safe, or I don't know, but yeah, and I don't remember what class it was, honestly. I'm blanking, but it is a little harder to be open about either sexuality, gender, race when I do see that sort of thing, because it's just, I mean, history alone tells me that males alone are scary sometimes, but yeah, when I don't see enough diversity in class, it's a little harder. And then especially if the professor is also of the same gender and race.
Um, so when you've struggled academically, like to what extent have you ever dropped a class or failed a class?
Yes, I definitely did. It
What
was during the pandemic. Just
Okay, why do you
because
think that? What happened?
the motivation wasn't there. I learned very quickly that online classes just weren't for me. I cannot be home where my family is very not loud, but my family's very my sisters are very nosy and my family's very on top of me, and if I'm home then I'm being called out for every other thing, or do this, do that, help me with this, help me with that. So it's really hard alone to focus on making time for Zoom classes or doing homework or other stuff. So it was very easy to not care anymore. And since it's online, a part of me is like, if I can't see it, it's not there. If my laptop is not open with the assignment I'm supposed to be doing, then I don't need to be doing it. So at one point, even the only semester I really failed was a spring semester, and it was 2021, I think. I signed up for no, sorry, it was a summer semester, and I signed up for summer courses. After like the second week, I completely forgot I even signed up for classes, and I wasn't dropped from any of them, so it was just automatic fail. And I did not remember until I got an email that I was on an academic what was the word? Probation. Yes, because I failed like 2-3 classes. I can't remember how many I took, and I was just like more upset at myself because I was like, I literally signed up for these classes. How could you possibly forget? But also, I wasn't at all motivated to even do them. So that was on me, because why would you sign up for classes if you're not going to take them?
So, with regard to campus life, have you ever felt harassed, discriminated against because of your identity as queer or somebody who's Latina?
Harass? No, I don't. I don't think so. I think this campus, at least to me, is pretty accepting. It's pretty good. I've noticed some things that maybe aren't, what's it called? Aren't very inclusive when it comes to disabilities or religion, but nothing so far when it comes to the queer community, or at least Latino community.
What about bias? I know harass is kind of a strong word. And then also, I'm just curious to hear what you've heard about like religion and disabilities.
Bias. I don't think so. I mean, not to my knowledge. At least in classes, not to my knowledge. Maybe one class, but it was a little biased towards people of color. To my knowledge, and at least not in the queer community.
And how was that class biased towards people of color?
I want to say it was, again, it was a class we took in the SESI program. It was for STEM-based career paths, and I want to say he was more motivating towards people of color. Like, he was very, I want to say, pushy towards doing our best and working hard, and in that sense, I don't have any problem with that, because I think we do need that motivation and that support. But not a negative bias, I should say.
Okay, that's what I thought you meant.
Yeah, no, sorry. Should have clarified.
In favor of, yeah.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, disabilities. Also, I didn't ask you about your anxiety and how that's affected you in the classroom.
For the disabilities and religion, just for a very long time, at least there's some stuff around campus where either for wheelchairs specifically, either the buttons won't work, so I have had to help a couple people in wheelchairs open doors because the buttons don't work, or especially to go to the bathroom. Kind of important to have, and kind of important to keep up in that sense of like maintenance because, people need it. So it was kind of annoying because it went on for months on end. I came for like 2 semesters straight, and that's the same button wasn't working, and it's just I can't imagine the inconvenience for people, who need them. So that bothered me. And then when it came to religion, it's just when I see protests and stuff, and it's I don't mind the people that are out and kind of just if you go up to them and talk to them about whatever they're talking about, they're very they kind of if you don't talk to them, they leave you alone. But it's just some problematic protests that sometimes happen on campus that inevitably happen, and I don't feed into it and I try to ignore it because it's not something that I need to protest or I need to defend my morals or beliefs. I think to each their own, and if you truly believe whatever you believe, go for it. But yeah, just some stuff that I'm like, okay.
What was it? What was the protest?
Just some pro-life stuff, and like sometimes their banners are, I don't know. Sometimes I don't really see the purpose of it. Sometimes I, at least in my opinion, sometimes it feels really, they just want a reaction out of you rather than actually wanting to change your beliefs or morals. I don't know. It just seems kind of pointless to me sometimes.
So what do you think the college could do to make queer students in general feel more included and safe on campus?
I think the best way I can describe it is I shouldn't have to actively be looking for a club or a class specifically on the queer community to feel accepted or to feel represented, for example. I think it's really cool that there is such thing and that if you're looking for it, it's there and it's available. But also, it should just be normal. Like it should just be a part of like history lessons, for example, or something as simple as my film professor who would bring it up occasionally and speak about it and not be afraid or tiptoe around the subject. Like I think it's so marginalized, so sometimes separated from race or separated from I don't know, mainly race. So it's seen as its own thing rather than a part of something already existing, for example. And so I think if it was more included into just daily subjects, it could be more normalized or not seen as what's the word? Not seen so apart. I don't know how to explain it, but I don't know. It's just I wish it was brought up in more subjects, even as simple as history or even English. I don't know how, but it's just the fact that I can't even remember classes that bring it up often is worrisome enough, you know?
Did your film professor, when your film professor brought up queerness, were the experiences of queer people of color brought up?
No.
So, what do you think? I mean, do you have any thoughts about that? Like, what? Because often queerness gets read as white, right? And
Yes.
when queerness is brought up, it's usually often queer white people, and then that's supposed to cover everything.
No, actually,
Yeah.
unless it was for a specific movie or film, for example, that was about queerness and people of color, or the actor was a person of color who was queer, then it was, the subject or the topic at hand. But again, you have to go out and look for it, or you have to go out of your way to be able to talk about it. It's not automatically included in the topic or the subject of queerness. It's very people of color queerness rather than just the umbrella term queer. Like you have to have an isolated topic or discussion about it in order to feel like it's a part of the discussion.
So for programs like CESI and maybe Puente now, if you were involved now, would you like to see something geared more towards like Latinx or Latinx students in particular, queer students in particular? Do you think that would be like student life, curriculum, whatever it is? Do you think that would be helpful if you were putting yourself in that place now?
I think so, yes, because I think it's just important to feel seen and to feel the sense of community. And it's hard to feel a part of a community if it is the majority of the race white, or something you don't identify as, because you still feel isolated. If i i mean the 2 days that we went to the club in high school, it was mainly white, and so as a part of it, as you want to feel, you still feel very isolated because you're very obviously not white, and then it's that weird feeling of isolation, even though you're a part of the community. So I feel like having a specific, or having more diversity when it comes to the different clubs or classes even is really helpful. Just to have that sense of belonging, not just in the state of queerness, but also the state of race in the class.
So, do you have community on campus, or where do you find community?
I think on campus, yeah. I mean, through friends or through classmates that you inevitably befriend because you're in the same queer community or in the same racial, what's it called, racial culture, for example. You do find that support and that sense of community with them. Mm-hmm.
Okay, I think there are more questions I could ask, but I'm gonna just ask this maybe 2 more questions. So, in general, what makes you excited about being a college student, and what you think about and your future as a sort of a college student and as a human being?
In general, what excites me?
Yeah. What are you looking forward to?
I think the opportunities. Even if you go through a bunch of major shifts and major educational shifts, I should say, like switching majors all the time, it's still, at least on this campus, I've felt a lot of support with that because we have so many classes for different majors and different subjects. I've switched majors like 3 times, and I feel like I finally landed on one that I actually want to keep learning about and want to study and want to do with further on. And at least for me, Sac City has been really helpful when it comes to that, and I'm excited to transfer, and I'm excited to continue down the road that I've decided on and continue to learn. And it's all really exciting, especially I think having the passion for what you're learning helps a lot because you have that passion to continue on.
Okay, anything else you would like to add or questions you would like to return to?
Not that I'm aware of. I don't know if you asked all the questions you wanted to ask about education.
I probably didn't. I have too many questions here, to be honest with you. But
Gotcha.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, of course.